Welcome to Basket Talks new episode. This is Mir Demir Demirer from Basket Talks. In this episode, we are with Bob Willett. Hi, Coach. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great too. And first of all, how was your training today? I want to start with this.
Actually, it's still early in the day here. Our trainings start in the evening, so we're 2 hours away from starting our trainings. However, we do sometimes do stuff during the day, but usually during the day, we're working on our sports management company, working on our Deuce Brand, and just getting ready for the evening. So typically we're on the court during the week from about 4 o'clock till 9 o'clock at night. And then on the weekends, we're on the court during the day.
Yeah, it's too busy, I think.
It's busy. I just finished a Zoom call with someone in Denmark to put together a camp. I got this Zoom call now. Then we do our trainings, and then tonight I'm on the phone with Japan at 9:30 tonight. So
Yeah,
busy.
Thank you for that, and thank you for joining me, and thank you for accepting my invitation. And then,
Thanks for having me.
I want to say, my plan was I want to join this interview with Deuce Brand sweatshirt, but I couldn't calculate the time. And
I got it. We're gonna have to send you out some gear, bro. I'd love to do that.
Makes me so happy. Yeah, thank you. I'm curious about your basketball career and your basketball history. So, first of all, when and where did you first become interested in basketball?
Well, I mean, I could go back to, I was probably 9-10 years old, and growing up in Canada, they mainly only showed Lakers games and Boston Celtics games on TV. I remember watching the LA Lakers play, and I just fell in love with the game, and I didn't know a lot about it at that time. Kind of grew up in an area where hockey was very prevalent, hockey, soccer, football, but just watching the speed of the game, watching kind of how they promoted the game back then, and Magic Johnson and all of those guys, I just started falling in love with the game at that time. And so there wasn't a lot of club basketball. You first kind of got introduced to basketball at school, playing like junior high or middle school basketball. So I was probably age 12, 13 before I started playing organized basketball. I mean, I fell in love with it. I played all sports just like most kids did back then. I always felt like I had this basketball in my hand, and that was my calling and whatnot. And so over the years, I played middle school, and then I went in to play high school basketball and some provincial basketball, and then went on to play college basketball. We won a national championship in the late 80s. And then after that, I started coaching. Just a few years after coaching, I started doing a little bit of player development, just doing private sessions for players and whatnot. So I was doing some software stuff and whatnot during the days, and then I would train players at night. And 16, 17 years ago, I decided to go full time. It was about 14 years ago. I moved to Southern California, started up a training business out there. We had about 180 players out there that we trained on a regular basis. We still train many of those players. 7 years ago, moved back to Canada, and we got a couple hundred players that we train here on a regular basis. And I have an entire team now. So I have my son, Nolan Willett. I got David Kapinga and Matthew Ginto. So we put together an entire team, and now we travel all over the world training players.
Yeah, that's really great. And you said 17 years as a coach.
17 years full time, but I've been doing this now I've been doing this for 31 years now. I'm 53 now, so I'm an old guy, full time for 17 years. Yeah.
Yeah, but you don't looking like old. You know, if we play one-on-one, I think you can beat me.
I hope so. That's what I do for a living, but I'll be tired afterwards. How's that? But I can still get around on the court, and I can't beat my son anymore, though. I can tell you that. I can't beat Nolan anymore. He's too quick, but the game has kept me young, and players that I train have kept me young, so that has helped, and I appreciate that compliment. Thank you. There's some mornings I feel my age. There's some mornings I'm pretty sore, so yeah.
Yeah. And as you said, you work with players full time. right now. And I would you like to know how a player can train with you?
In the city that we live in, we have close to 200 players that train with us. Outside of that, I travel a lot. We have a pro team that we work with in Seoul, Korea called SK Knights, and we travel there. We are going to Japan in July. We'll probably be on the court with roughly about 100 players in Japan. We go throughout North America. So California, I probably have another 60 to 80 players. We collaborate with some top trainers kind of throughout North America and the world. So we're in Texas for the second time coming up here with some top trainers. So there's no shortage of players that we can train, but on a regular basis, on a day-to-day basis, we train roughly about 200 players in our own city. Mir, we have a model. We do have like a young group where they're kind of 9 to 11 years old, but for the most part, we start them right around 13 years old. And then we work with them right until they go off to college. Then we have a sports management company where we help place all of our players into pro jobs that want to continue to play overseas. So throughout Asia, Europe, you name it, and they come back in the off season and train with us. So we call it a start to finish model. So we start them at around 13. It's never really finished. Like we continue to train them until they finish high school, or if they go on to play college, university, or if they go on to play pro, we just remain family with them forever. Hence, two of my full-time trainers have been around our family since they were 10, 12 years old. Matthew and David, I trained them when they were young. Now they're full-time trainers for me.
Yeah, that's really great. And as a player, we need to catch up your camps, as you said, right? Deuce Brand camps. And I want to ask you about Deuce Brand Elite Camp. This is right?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, no, you nailed it. In the past, it's really just been my brand has just been Bob Willett or Bob Willett. Over the years, I got involved with Gary and Tom from Deuce Brand. This is a company based out of San Diego. It first started with just wristbands, and you'll find like NBA players, WNBA players, college athletes, football players, baseball players, people of all walks of lives walking around with a band. And there's different sayings that are on the band. We look at those sayings, they remind us of either an underdog mentality or just to never give up, or the one I'm wearing here is why, what, how, why do you play, what do you want to accomplish, how are you going to do that? So I got involved I used to get the owner to make bands for me for my training business. And long story short, I started introducing other people to the brand. They started making the bands themselves, and probably 6-7 years ago I started getting more involved in the apparel, and that brings us today where I help manage partnerships around the world from retail standpoint, but more importantly from an elite camp standpoint. So we do these Deuce Brand elite camps in different cities, different countries. It's really our way to get the brand out to the grassroots, to open up cities, to open up countries, to get our gear on people like yourselves, on the players themselves in different countries. Today, we've done many camps, but the Deuce Brand elite camps, we've done 5 of them. We have coming up here in 2023, we got 2 more happening in Texas, Northern California, we got Southern California, Japan, Taiwan. I just got off a call with Denmark. It's not going to be our first camp. It's not going to be a Deuce Brand elite camp in Denmark. All the trainers are going to be Deuce Brand trainers that are involved. And we're working on Seattle. We're doing our second one in Seattle coming up here. And the way players can get involved is twofold. One is continue to watch our social media, both Deuce Brand and Bob Willett, and we post. So if we're in a city or a country where you see that we're promoting for a Deuce Brand elite camp, then you can just DM us and get involved. Or you can contact us and say that one of these camps and you want to champion that in your country. For Turkey, for example, if there was players or contacts out there that contacted us and said, hey, we want to do a Deuce Brand elite camp, we can start that conversation. And if you have access to the players and whatnot, we can come out there and do a camp as well. And that's how a lot of these countries are working, is they're contacting us and they're like with the people that are involved with the brand, and everyone from Phil Handy from the Lakers and Kyrie Irving's heavily involved. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to get into the camp content and run into the camp. And as you said, you work with 13 years to 18 or pro,
Yeah.
right? And then what are your thoughts on training young basketball players as they age?
That's a great question. I mean, everyone has their own philosophy, but at the end of the day, there's only so much that you can kind of stray away from. So over the years, what I found that works for us, and I'm not very opinionated about what everyone's doing, and there's a lot of people doing amazing work with kids. But what I found that works best is this order is number one, we focus a lot at a young age, ball handling. Then we incorporate footwork. We find that you can't teach too much advanced footwork if their ball handling's not good because they're going to get frustrated. They're going to be losing the ball all the time. Thirdly, we teach them certain aspects of shooting and fundamentals early on, but we don't only focus on that at the beginning. It's ball handling, footwork, shooting. And we find that you could be the best shooter in the world, but if you can't get your shot off and you don't have the footwork, if you don't have the basketball IQ, if you don't have the ball handling to be able to get open, to get your shot off, a lot of times we can lose players to the game. They're going to get frustrated and quit because at a young age, watching young players, 11, 12, 13 years old, when they're playing, if they're running up and down the court and they're not getting the ball 5, 6, 7 times in a row because their ball handling's not good enough or their footwork, they're going to get frustrated and they're not going to have fun. That's typically the philosophy at the beginning, is a lot of attention on ball handling. Then we start involving more footwork. Then we start getting a little bit more advanced. We obviously are building their shot throughout that process. And then as important, basketball IQ lays over top of all of it. So when we're teaching them certain ball handling drills, we're explaining the why, like why are they doing those drills? So they understand how it translates into a game, or why we want them working on their own with their ball handling. When we're teaching them footwork, either off the catch or off the dribble, we're explaining why we do that. Why do we pick it up off our inside foot, hang the ball out? Why do we float with it? Why do we change pace? Why do we change heights? Why do we change directions? So the more their IQ gets built, their skill level gets built, it helps them both pick up the drills and the moves and the different things that we're teaching them quicker, but most importantly, it helps them translate it into games. So what they learn from us, if they understand the why, they're going to start doing it in games, as opposed to just being very skilled, but it's not translating. So I know we're not the only ones that train that way. In fact, most of my good friends and colleagues around the world have the similar philosophy, and it works, and kids enjoy it. And then lastly, I'd share with you, as they start developing and they start getting better, we involve a lot of game situation, game scenarios into our training. They're building their skill within the situation. So we do a lot of screen activities, side screen, pin down screen, flat screen, with a number of different situations, okay, like high hedge, medium hedge, sag hedge, double teams, bounce outs. We're always talking about where not only their defender on the ball is, but where the other defenders are. It's an enjoyable way to learn the game, and it's actually a very enjoyable way to teach the game, because we get to IQ component and put it into training.
Yeah, thank you. And this is really great philosophy, because my teammates, like, I have a friend like dancing with ball, have good ball handle and layup like Kyrie, shooting like Curry. But in the first step, in first dribble, he always do steps. He always moved him legs, foot. And
Right.
this stagement system is really great for players. And I think this is the common mistake for young players. We don't think about footwork, or we don't think about fundamentals. Just think about Curry have a cool shot or Kyrie have a cool layups. And how can I do that? But where is the fundamental and where is the base of basketball? And what are your thoughts on common mistake that most young players make?
It's not their fault, because the NBA is so attractive to watch, and they've done such a good job marketing it. A lot of players at a young age don't understand that that's an entirely different game than the college and high school level. Entirely different. Because of the legal defense, there's way more space on the court. Even though the athletes are bigger, stronger, faster, everything, it looks like it doesn't make sense why there should be more space, but because of the legal defense, there's tons of room to move. There's tons of room to take extra steps. But if you watch college basketball or high school basketball or FIBA international basketball, the players don't have that room. Or throughout Asia or anything, there's more zone defense. There's the seams are smaller and they're tighter. And so that's where the fundamentals are so important. One thing that we do talk to our players about, it's interesting when it comes to footwork. David Kapinga, one of the gentlemen that works with us full time as a trainer, an incredible basketball mind. All my trainers, Nolan Willett, David Kapinga, Matthew Ginto, they're all point guards. And there's a reason why my full-time trainers are point guards is I feel like point guards are like, they're an extension of the coach on the court. They more times than not have to be very high IQ. When they retire from a teaching standpoint, they have a lot to give back. Well, one thing that David always says is imagine being open all the time. If your footwork is correct, you have proper fundamental footwork at any age, 13, 18, 24, you're always open. It doesn't mean you're wide open. It just means you can get your shot off whenever you want because you have the proper footwork. For example, if I go to drive and I have someone on my hip, when I go to pick it up, I jump into my jump shot. I'm not going to get that shot off. But if I have someone on my hip and I'm going to the basket and the weak side comes forward and I need to pull up and I pull up off my inside foot and I pick it up late, the player on my hip is not going to know when I'm shooting. Therefore, I'm open. We teach that at a young age and we get them to understand that they spend the time on their fundamental footwork early, they're going to have more fun. They're going to score more points because that's what they want to do, right? They want to see the ball go in the basket. They can try the Curry and the Kyrie and all of that stuff. And by the way, everything that Kyrie does and that Steph Curry does and LeBron does and all of the top players, it's all fundamental. It's just elite fundamental. There's got to be a process to get there. You don't want to skip that process with the young players.
Yeah, and then you work with Kyrie. I saw, right? I saw your Instagram.
I had the pleasure of doing a camp that was driven by Phil Handy. He's the lead assistant coach for the Lakers and a good friend of mine and a good friend of Deuce Brand. In fact, he has his own brand within Deuce Brand called Be Your Own Goat, which is amazing. And he's trained Kyrie for years. Kyrie, Kobe, LeBron. The future of basketball is female camp because as you know, around the world, female athletes have come to the forefront. And the female basketball game today is a different world compared to 10 years ago. And Kyrie has been a big part and advocate of that. And so Kyrie was at that camp. He was there all day, spending time on the court. I got to spend a lot of time on the court with him. And he's a special player, but more importantly, a special person. He gives so much time to the game of basketball for the female game. And it's just done a lot. And he's really picked up where Kobe has left off. And there's other players around the world that have done the same thing. But Kyrie has really come to the forefront with that.
Yeah, thank you. And let's talk about new coaches, young coaches. And as a successful coach, what are your advice for young coaches?
I can only speak from a player development, from a trainer standpoint. I've coached high school ball, I've coached club ball. My passion is player development. So when I get asked from young coaches about wanting to get in the player development world, I do see a lot of young people in their early 20s. They want to train NBA players or they want to train pro players overseas or college players. They want to do that before training younger players and everything. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, often struggle with trying to actually get to that point because they're missing the step of creating their own philosophy, creating their voice, learning over the years. So my recommendation always is instead of going after players that have already made it, because at the end of the day, being a player development coach for a overseas EuroLeague player or NBA or WNBA NBA player, most of their development has already been done. Those players are already developed. If you look at guys like Phil Handy and stuff, do you know what they do in the off season? Very seldom is he on the court with his NBA guys. He's going back to the drawing board and he's on the court with 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds all summer long, because that's where it starts. My recommendation is learn how to train a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, a 14-year-old before you start training a college player. Also, learn to have your own style. There's some stuff that we steal, right? Like we go online, we see people's social media. We're like, okay, I'm going to use this and use that. Nothing wrong with that at all. That's what it's there for. That's why we post. That's why we collaborate. But you also want to find out what's your style, what works for you, what are you passionate about? Because if you don't, you're going to get bored of it, or you're going to want to just move on. And we need player development coaches that are in this for the long run. But at the end of the day, my recommendation for younger people is start slowly and learn a style and create a foundation and a philosophy before going after the top players.
Yeah, thank you for advices, and let's move on to the final question. This is my favorite question because this is like a shortcut of all interview, I think. And then what do you think about what are the musts of basketball?
I think the number one must is continue to remind yourself to have fun. I say this to our players all the time. There's only one real way to have fun playing basketball, and that's if you're good. It doesn't mean you have to be great, but if you're not good at something, if you're not good at ball handling, or if you're not a good shooter, or if you're not a good passer, it's a tough sport. The number one thing is learn how to have fun. And obviously, you need to be able to sacrifice and put some work in, just like any sport, or just like if you want to have fun in math class or English class, you have to study. So it's no different. And remember that it is a game, because as they get older, find that it gets tough. You get injuries. There's different things come up. Adversity comes up and challenges. You want to always remember why you're playing, and you're playing to have fun because it's an escape. It's enjoyable. You feel free on the court, whatever those reasons are. So that's the number one thing. The IQ behind the game of basketball is, I tell a lot of our younger players, make sure you play a lot so that your IQ builds, like the more outside of just organized basketball. So you're going to play within a system, school ball, club ball, but make sure you're playing 3-on-3, you're playing with your buddies outside, so you learn the game outside of system basketball. The other thing that we tell our players a lot at a young age is watch the game. One of the best ways to learn the game is by watching pros college basketball, for younger kids watching advanced high school basketball, because their IQ will build. We have kids that come in that are skilled, but they don't watch the game, so they have troubles translating it into the game. The last thing is, like, however much you put into the game is what you're going to get back. I'm a full-time skills trainer and player development coach. The players that put in the most amount of work, they excel the most. That's the trade-off. Learn, love the process of getting better and enjoying the game and working. You'll find that journey is the most rewarding part, not the games. It's like yourself with your podcast. When you look back, this is the final product right here. But it's the relationship and the work that it took for you and I to be messaging back and forth, to get to know each other. All of those things is what we're going to remember. We built our relationship and our friendship before we did this podcast. And to me, that's embracing the journey, understanding it, and learning from it. It's no different in basketball.
And thank you for coming, and thank you for make time for this interview and joining me. And then
It's my pleasure.
And then thank you for all replies. I hope we meet in real. I want to participate of your camps if you come to Europe, or if I catch you somewhere. Then thank you.
We would love that. We post about it, and I'm sure we will one day meet face to face, and we'll play that one-on-one game, me and you, when we see each other.
Yeah.
I look forward to that, and congratulations on what you're doing here, and I was happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, and see you. And Deuce, I don't know this. Deuce meaning, I mean the word meaning. Deuce word. I saw some video like Deuce, and Deuce means bye bye.
No, Deuce means peace. Peace.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like,
so
and it means bringing the world together, and it means exactly what we're doing here. It's like-minded people. It's not just a basketball brand; it's a brand for everyone, and it's been put together so that it brings people together from all walks of life.
yeah, so thank you for coming and Deuce. Bye bye.
Deuce, I love it. Take care. Have a great one.
And
See you
you.
later.
Bye-bye. In this episode, we are with Bob Willett. Thank you for your time. I hope you enjoy. See you in next episode. Bye bye.